Hi, it's Lou from Christian Faith and Fiction. I have some Christian fiction books to share with you today, as well as one non-fiction, and these are books that I've all read recently. I have been into reading some more cozy mysteries recently, so I have a few of those, a couple of those to share with you this time as well. So let's see how I got on. If you've read any of these books and you have some thoughts on those, please do leave your thoughts down in the comments, and any recommendations that you have from books you've read recently. I just finished reading Meet Me at the Starlight by Rachel Hawke. This is her latest book, and it is a dual time period set in the 1930s and in the 1980s. It is following three different character perspectives. So in the 1930s, it's following Tuesday, who is struggling to keep her family going. She's not a single mum, but her husband keeps disappearing off. She suspects he's into some kind of crime thing or something, and they have tensions in their marriage. She's looking after the kids, and she has connections with this skating rink called the Starlight. And then in the 1980s, she's much older and she's trying to save the Starlight from being demolished by the town mayor, who wants to upgrade the town. And she enlists the help of her grandson, Matt, who is a Hollywood actor, who is also a bit of a playboy, a bit reckless, and he's trying to put his reputation back together after an incident that happens at the beginning of the book. He's there in the town, and then also a supermodel, Harlow, who has worked with Matt in the past, but her life has kind of fallen apart. Her fiance left her and she started comfort eating, so she's put on weight, but in order to get jobs as a supermodel, she's having to try to diet. She's also got a very bossy mother who is trying to run her life, and she comes to the town as well and gets involved with the Starlight. So it is a romance, it is a sort of small town family drama. It is two time periods, both of them I guess historical. Although the 1980s I was a child in, so it's not exactly historical for me. But yeah, I really enjoyed the skating rink ideas. I used to roller skate. This is a roller skate rink, not an ice skate rink. I used to roller skate when I was in the 80s, just up and down the pavement. So I would have loved to have a go, I think, on a very flat surface, because it was always a bit rough and ready on the pavements. I enjoyed the nostalgia of it. I enjoyed the kind of acting, supermodel kind of culture. I enjoyed the complicated relationships that were going on. I enjoyed how sort of suspense was brought about by the foreshadowing between the two different time periods. You might find out something in one that you know is going to happen then in the other one, or come to light in the other one. So I enjoyed that. I did find it a little bit bitty at times. There's so many different characters to follow, that I felt like I didn't quite get enough depth or follow through with all of them, all the relationships. But I did enjoy Hollow's romantic relationships. I don't want to say too much about who ends up with who, but yeah, there is romance going on there. There is also that Tuesday's relationship with her husband that sort of you see through over time. It follows, as well as the whole kind of drama of trying to save this skating rink from being demolished. It does have some faith content in there. Some of it's sort of more supernatural type of faith. There is her character Emmanuel, which appears in some of her other books, comes up in this book as well. So at key moments, God is mentioned, but not necessarily all the time, all the way through. So definitely at the key moments, he comes into it. There are moments that made me cry. There were some heartwarming moments as well. And so I would give this book 8.5 out of 10 for story enjoyment, and 2 out of 3 I think for Christian faith rating. I wasn't quite sure what to give it because 3 out of 3 for the key moments, but it's not there all constantly, all the time, people thinking about God. So I give it 2 out of 3, I think. I finished reading Take the Next Step by Dave Sumner. This is the story of Guitar Aid, which is a charity that gives away guitars to people all around the world to help them with their worship. If they can't afford a guitar or it's difficult to get hold of, they will give away guitars to people. Dave is actually one of my friends. I've known him for over 20 years. He was worship leader in the church where we both go to, and when I first started out there, he was one of the people who I looked up to and was in the band with, and then I went on to become a worship leader myself for many years, and now I am back in the band, not leading. Same as Dave, in our church we are both still serving in the worship team. So this book is going through how Dave was inspired by God to set up the Guitar Aid, and how him and his brother have travelled around many different countries in the world to give away the guitars. It is a kind of travelogue, if you like, of the different journeys they've been on, different sort of stories, the good, the bad and the ugly, some funny, some emotional stories in there as well. Some of them I've knew and I've lived through with them. Some of them I didn't know anything about, which was really interesting for me to read. Obviously I'm coming at this as from the place that I know the author of this book, and I know quite a few of the people that are mentioned in it, so I can really hear Dave speaking when I am reading this. It sounds just like him. This has a lot of substance in there. It's definitely got the style of just someone sitting down over coffee just to tell you about their missions trips. Dave is someone who, for the majority of the time, he was working full-time and also had a family, but he managed in his holiday time, as well as managed to get overtime so that he could take times off to go and do some missions trips. And then later on he worked for Assemblies of God in Great Britain missions department. So if you're interested in hearing the stories of someone who's been a missionary, or if you're interested in knowing how someone can be involved in missions but still with the commitments of work and family and home, this would be an interesting book for you to read. I liked that it isn't really hyped up. This is like story after story after story. And if there's any criticism I had at all of the book, it would be that I would like a bit more detail in some of the stories, but then the book would have been much longer, and there's just a lot of content and different anecdotes and snippets and just little snapshots of a life that's been led in missions. The foreword is written by Martin Smith, who used to be the frontman of Delirious. He's quite a famous worship leader, and he's written the foreword for that. And then there's some quotes from like Matt Redman, Cliff Richard, Philippa Hanna, and all through the book has different quotes from people who received guitars and what it meant to them. So obviously this book is to tell people about what Guitar Aid does and how it got set up, and so there's a lot about how Guitar Aid has impacted people around the world. And it's definitely been interesting to me to see at the beginning how when they were going into like Eastern European countries when they first opened up, and how different that was compared to when I later went in with them much later. It was very different. So yeah, it was an interesting book. I will obviously be giving it 5 stars. I would say 9 out of 10 for would be my rating for it. Currently it's available in the UK in paperback and ebook, and in the USA I know it's available on Kindle. It may be available elsewhere in ebook as well. So I'm reading through this bind-up of 4 puzzling cozy mysteries called Missing Pieces, and this is published by Barber. I don't think you can buy the novellas separately. There is a collection of 4 novellas, but I'm going to review them separately just because I am reading them in between other things, so you'll have to look out for the reviews of the other novellas at a later date, and then I'll say at the end. But if I leave it right till the end, I probably won't remember what happens in each story. So this first one is by Cynthia Hickey, and it's called Elvis Has Left the Building, and it is following Cece, who is hosting a jigsaw puzzle party in Apple Blossom in Arkansas, and it's sort of a vintage 1950s type of theme to it, and she has employed an Elvis impersonator to come along. There's a Elvis themed other things going on, including some of the puzzles, and during that time one of the puzzles, which is supposed to be worth quite a lot of money, goes missing, as well as the Elvis impersonator ends up dead. So the style of this one is quite upbeat, fun, if you can say murder mystery is fun. I enjoyed the mystery enough of the plot to continue on to the end. On the downside, I found the characters quite unbelievable, sort of unrealistic. I'm trying to put my finger on what exactly it was. I just didn't believe that they were real people, and it made the whole thing a bit ridiculous, I guess. The scenario wasn't the problem, although it is quite, a novel with the Elvis themes and the puzzles and things going on. But I just didn't believe in the characters' kind of reactions and choices that they were making in there. I don't expect there to be a huge character journey, character development within a novella, because there's only like 110 pages long. But yeah, I didn't find them totally believable, so that kind of took away from my enjoyment of the story. But as I said, I enjoyed it enough to want to find out who did it. So I would give this one 6 out of 10 for story enjoyment. There is some references to God and to praying in there, so I would give it 1.5 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. Okay, so I finished the second novella in this collection. It's called The Puzzle King by Linda Baten Johnson. It is following Jane, who enters a puzzle competition, and she is she's going to be there. It's going to be a timed event. Everyone's got to do it in the shortest possible time. And when she's there, she meets another team who are competing. The head of that team is somebody who appears to be not entirely liked by everybody else. And then he ends up dying. And so everybody is forced to stay in the hotel where they're at the competition, stay on overnight so they can be investigated and interviewed by the sheriff. So that's, the mystery is around her. I liked that this one is just focused mostly on the mystery and the characters in the mystery. It doesn't try to add too much else in to it, and I enjoyed that. I think this one paced out really well. I found the characters much more believable in this one, and even though the setting, I've never heard of a puzzle competition, but I'm sure maybe there are some out there. I think I guessed the ending a little way into it, but I enjoyed the mystery element of it. I would give it 8 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating. There is some faith content in there. There's mention of going to church, of praying, doing devotions and that kind of thing on the positive side. On the negative side, it does mention the main character doing yoga breathing once, but it's just one mention of that. So overall, I would give it 2 minus 1 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. I finished reading Lion Warrior by James R. Hannibal. This is the third book in the trilogy The Light Raider Academy. This is a Christian fantasy series. It also is a role-playing game, I think, that involves studying scripture and things. You can look it up online on their website. As I say, this is the final book. The first book is Wolf Soldier. The second one, Bear Knight. It's following a group of students who are studying to become light raiders. So in the first book, Connor, one of the main characters, finds out about the Light Raider Academy and starts to study, and then the story continues on. There's a fight going on between different parts of the world. So in one part of the world, there are dragons who are ruling over that world, and then there is another side. They can pass through portals and they go into another side of the world which is free from the dragon overlords, and that's where people who follow the rescuer, they are taken, they go to, and they can live a life free from the powers of the dragons. But the dragons are always trying to and the enemy are always trying to get in and destroy the kingdom that has been set up away from them. It's quite hard to describe this trilogy as a whole without giving away any of the plot. I hope I haven't given away too much of the plot from my description. It is a fantasy world that has dragons in it. It has goblins, orcs, trolls, various different enemies, and you keep on finding different creatures, both bad and good, as you go through the series. It's very complex in that sense. It is epic fantasy, so it's following several different characters. By the time you get to the third book, you're split up into different points of view, even more so. So it is definitely in the epic fantasy line. It is young adult. It does have short chapters, so it doesn't follow like epic fantasy that I've read before has very long chunky chapters. This one is like thriller paced, and James Hannibal writes some of his other books are thrillers, so you can kind of tell from that. It has very good action and adventure. The romance in it is more of a hinted at and very light, and there isn't a lot of introspection in that sense, so I would definitely be able to recommend this one for teenage boys as well as girls. So yeah, and anybody who doesn't really like romance, this one doesn't have very much in it, just sort of hints at it. Most of the relationships are to do with friendships and to do with what they believe about the rescuer and the evil overlord. There is a lot of faith content in all three of the books. This one continues with that. The magic system has a lot to do with speaking out scripture and prayer and that kind of thing, so it is very Christian in that sense. There's a sort of a spiritual warfare allegory going on, and a kind of an allegory of the church, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of darkness, and also our job as evangelists to go out and try to win and save people for Christ. That is all kind of hinted at, is paralleled, as it were, in the trilogy. But I particularly like all the use of scripture that pops up. They don't give references to it because it's used as if it was part of their world, and they'll give like in a different language, and then they'll translate it, but the translation will be like a quotation from the Bible. So there's a lot of Christian content in that sense in there. The only thing I found about this, which I would say was negative for me, was it is very complicated, and therefore I did get confused at times. I would have liked a bit more description. There are so many different creatures and magical elements and different parts being introduced all the time to you that it was a bit much at times for me. And I think if it had been a little bit more simplified or more described, I would have been able to follow it more. But there was really good action and plot going on. I certainly didn't get bored at any point. It was always something new going on, something happening. I liked the characters and their interactions with each other. I liked there was lots of different characters. And yeah, I would definitely say this is one of my favourite Christian fantasy series because of the content in it is so strong, and because of the variety of things in there. It was both positive and negative, really. So I would give this 8.5 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating and 3 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. I think I would probably even enjoy it more the second time reading it round because I would understand more about the world in it. I finished the third novella in this collection, Missing Pieces. This one is by Teresa, Ives, Lilly, and this is called A Puzzling Weekend. And it is following Tabby, who has a guest house, which is like a pumpkin-themed guest house, and she's running a jigsaw puzzle mystery weekend. And it's the first time she's run it, and a lot of the locals come to sort of test run it. And she hires a cook for the weekend because she wants to be joining in with the puzzles as well. And then the cook ends up dead. The cook has 2 very cute dogs, so there's dogs in this story as well. So then Tabby is like trying to help the police investigate the history that people have who have come to the weekend and how they're connected with the cook and that kind of thing. I thought this was a sweet sort of cozy mystery. I enjoyed that it was mostly focused on the mystery elements and the different relationships between the different characters. I enjoyed it as a story. I think I probably would have enjoyed it if it was longer and a little bit more convoluted, but as a novella story I thought it did a really good job, and you sort of got to know the characters quite well in a very short space of time and the different interactions. There was some faith content in there, so I think overall I would give this one 8 out of 10 for story enjoyment and 2 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. I finished reading A Noble Scheme by Roseanna M. White. This is the second book in the Imposters series. It is set in 1909, starts off in Northumberland, goes around in England quite a bit. This is following one of the characters from the first book, well, 2 of the characters that were side characters in the first book. This is following Gemma and Graham. Gemma is part of the Imposters, and she is also has a sort of column that she writes in the newspapers and magazines. She's known as GM Parker. She has an alter ego of studying fashionable people and writing a column about them in the papers. At the same time, she's like a secret investigator, part of this Imposters team. And also Graham, who is an architect, and he does his work for his architectural firm during the day, as it were, and then he's also working for the Imposters, looking up plans of buildings and that kind of thing to help them out. They have a history which you know about in the first book. You know that they just don't get on with each other. They are at each other's throats, and there's a history there for a reason that is brought out in this book, which I will not say anything about. I absolutely loved this book. It's a fantastic story, both a mystery and suspense, but also a really heart-wrenching, hard-hitting, dealing with some difficult topics, difficult things, which I'm going to be very vague about because a lot of the big reveals in the book have to do with these things. So some characters are dealing with big emotions like grief and anger and forgiveness, unforgiveness. Other characters are also wrestling with relationship with God and suffering and all sorts of questions like that. There is a massive character arc going on, both emotionally for the characters, both relationally and also spiritually as well. So there's a whole range of things going on, as well as a very compelling mystery and suspense. So the book is all about emotions and working through character stuff, as well as really fantastic mystery. So I absolutely love this one. I think it was written really well. It does deal with some very hard topics. So there are trivial warnings that I could give for it, but I can't because of it would totally spoil all the reveals. So yes, just be aware that it does deal with hard topics. The actual mystery itself that they're looking for is a boy has been kidnapped. The boy and his cousin look very similar. They spend a lot of time together, but one is from a rich family, another is from not so rich family. And the boys swap places, so one gets kidnapped and the other one in the other one's place. This is also set around Christmas time and into winter. It does kind of plays a part throughout, but it doesn't feel like necessarily a Christmassy book because of the harder hitting stuff in it. But if you like more emotional books at Christmas, then you might find it a good one for Christmas. I was glad that I read it beforehand and maybe not over the actual Christmas period, but it definitely has a wintry feel to it. This was absolutely beautifully written. There were parts of it where I just choked up, and a number of occasions where a tear came to my eyes, and just because it was so beautifully written in the very emotional parts, very lyrically written in those parts, touched my heart, my soul. The Christian story and allegory and that was brought into those moments and drawn into the story was just really beautiful, and yeah, absolutely loved the story, loved how it was written, loved the multifaceted nature of it, just very, very beautifully written. So I would give this one 10 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating and a 3 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. This could be my favourite book of the year. I've still got, books to read till the end of the year, but this could be my top book of the year. I finished reading the final novella in this collection. This is by Janice Thompson and it's called Puzzle Me This. This is following Mariah, who is joining other jigsaw puzzle sellers in a sort of conference selling fair type of thing, and she is starting out. She's wanting to sell puzzles that she's bought. She also has an antique one that she's been inherited and that she wants to sell, which is worth quite a lot of money. So while they are there setting up, there is what they think gunshots outside. The lights all go out. They have to go downstairs in the dark and things. When they come back up, the antique puzzle that she had on her table was missing. It's been stolen, and then they find one of the other vendors has been murdered. This was fairly upbeat in style. I enjoyed the sort of lightheartedness, I guess, of the mystery element of it. There wasn't too much gruesomeness in there. I liked following the mystery through. Most of the time I liked the characters. Sometimes they're a little bit irritating, and the mystery, I enjoyed it. I didn't totally buy into the motives. Can't go into any more details, but I didn't totally buy into it, the solution or whatever, but I did enjoy reading it, so I would give it 7.5 out of 10 for story enjoyment and 2 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. There was some Christian faith in there, talking about churches and faith and beliefs and things, so that was good. So I think overall I did an average of the whole collection. I would give it 7.5 out of 10 and 1.5 out of 3 for Christian faith for like an average rating for the whole thing, but some I liked more than others. I finished reading the third book in the Wing Feather saga that's by Andrew Peterson. This is The Monster in the Hollows, and as I say, it's book 3. It's a continuous series, so can't say too much, but it is following the Igby children, and they are continuing their story. The whole series is sort of middle grade, I think, Christian fantasy. It has Christian overtones in the book. This one I think had more Christian content than the other two that I've read, I think. In terms of the story, the Igby children are living in a world where it is controlled by fangs. It is a bit like an Nazi-occupied Europe in some ways. They are the enemy and they've occupied their land. They've conquered the kingdom, and they are trying to stay out of trouble, stay away from them, stay away from being captured in the first book, and that sort of continues as a theme throughout. I can't say very much more because it would spoil the first and second books. But this story, in terms of how it compares to the other ones, this one is more like the first book in a sense. It is more taking place in one place, a little bit less travelling around, and there's a lot more character building to the plot. So there's a lot to do with one of the boys in particular learning a lot of lessons, processing a lot of things that happened in book 2. Yeah, we get some reveals, we get some action. There is some funny elements to it, but maybe not as much as some of the other books. I say this one was more middle grade content than some of the others in terms of the majority of the book. There's still some violence in here, so that's something to be aware of. But this one had more dealing with school topic type issues. So there's some dealing with bullying, there's dealing with not feeling that you're fitting in, being in a new school sort of environment and having to start school. Those kind of themes and topics are in this book. For that reason, I probably liked book 2 a bit more, because being an adult, I don't quite relate to that experience anymore. But I would have loved to have read this, I think, and when I was first starting community college, which is sort of 11-year-old age, 11, 12, 13 sort of age. I would have found it very helpful, I think. Yeah, as I say, there is some violence in here as well, but mostly it's sort of fighting monsters, and we get some more knowledge of the world and knowledge of the past in this book. There is some splitting of perspectives a bit between the main kind of perspectives, and then a separate one as well. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I would give this one 9 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating, and I would give it 2 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. I finished reading Off the Chain by Janice Thompson. This is book 1 in the Gone to the Dogs Mysteries series. This is a cosy mystery without the murder, so if you like mystery without murder, this might be one to try. This one's following Marigold. She works at a veterinary clinic and she really wants to rescue dogs. This is her first attempt at rescuing a dog, and it starts off with her trying to crawl into a pipe to rescue this dog that's been straying, gone stuck in there, and she manages to get it out, but then the police come along and stuff happens, and it's just, you know, comedy of errors sort of thing. But she rescues this dog, and then she's trying to find out who the dog belongs to, but then also somebody smashes the window of the vet's clinic, and they're trying to find out who is responsible for it and why and what happened. There's also romance in here as well, so it's a cute contemporary romance alongside a cozy mystery. I enjoyed the style of it. I enjoyed that it didn't have anything particularly dark involved. I liked there was mystery and elements involved in there, and I liked there was dogs in there too. Although I've more often had cats than dogs, I still do enjoy animals of all kinds, and I like hearing about dogs. I enjoyed the different characters. I enjoy getting to know different characters in this book. I don't know whether it follows these characters at all in the rest of the series, but it is the other series is to do with dogs and missing things and that kind of cozy mystery series. I did sometimes find the characters a little bit annoying, and yeah, I didn't always completely kind of buy into them, but I did enjoy reading along in the evenings at night time. I liked that it wasn't overly dark. There was some Christian faith content in there. I really liked her grandmother character. Not a 5-star book for me, but it's still enjoyable. We'll give it 8 out of 10 for a story enjoyment rating, and 2 out of 3 I think for Christian faith rating. I finished reading Meeting Her Match by Jen Turano. This is book 3 in the Matchmakers series, and this one is following Camilla Pierpont, who did appear in book 2. She used to be a matchmaker, but she's sort of retired now. She had a difficult situation with someone she really liked, a man she really liked who deserted her, and it all went sour, and so she decided that she is never going to marry. She, at the beginning of this story, has someone, her and her companion are being chased, and there's this situation where they think they're going to be kidnapped, and so they're running away, and a man steps in to try and help them, except that they think he's one of the kidnappers, and so there's a whole situation going on, and it's, you know, comedy elements to the book. This is historical fiction, I should say. It's Christian fiction, and it is set Hudson River Valley, spring 1889 is where it starts, and it travels to another part of the country as well. The man in question is Mr. Owen Chesterfield, and he is looking for someone to take his sister in hand and make her more refined because of some unfortunate events that happened to his sister, and so he is trying to approach Camilla to get her to come and do that for him, but she obviously thinks that he's one of her kidnappers, so there's a whole sort of series of things going on. The book is about her getting to know Owen, getting to know his sisters, getting to know his family, trying to make them more refined, but she's a little bit stuck up and a bit stuck in her ways, if you like, at the beginning. Very a stickler for decorum and everything, and you see them both sort of change. He starts to become more refined, she starts to become a bit more loosened up a bit. Yeah, it was a fun romance. It was a fun historical romance. A little bit of Christian content in there, not a huge amount. So I would give it a 1 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. But it was a fun book. At the beginning of the book, I did not like Camilla very much. I found her irritating and too kind of arrogant, I guess, at the beginning. So the first third of the book I was not liking her, but then she starts to change and I really liked her towards the end of the book. There's some really strong female characters in here who are quite on the prickly side to start with, so yeah, I didn't warm to them to start with, but I did by the end of the book. So for that reason I would give it 8 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating. It was nice to revisit this series, and yeah, again, historical romance with a touch of Christian content and some humour and character development in there, but mostly sort of light and a little bit of suspense, but mostly about the characters and the romance. So those are the books that I've read recently. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments on any of those and any books that you've read recently. If you're not already subscribed, please do consider subscribing to my channel. I do appreciate that you have taken some time to watch today. I hope you are having a fantastic reading week. If you'd like to watch some more videos about Christian fiction, you can watch these videos over here. Until next time, I pray God bless you and your families. Okay, see you again. Bye.